I'm Michael Flierl. Thank you for that great introduction, Brian, and thanks for the invite, Kristen. Big thanks to the research commons. But yeah, I'm Michael Flierl. I'm an associate professor and student learning librarian at the Ohio State University Libraries. Um, and yeah, I'm here to talk about AI. I've done some consulting work for AI. I've co-founded an AI startup, so I consider myself an AI practitioner. And today is all going to be about showing kind of the newest capabilities, discussing some of the most important ethical and pedagogical and research components or aspects of it. So really, it's going to be kind of fluid. The goal here for me is to show maybe a few things that y'all might not have seen yet, and to hopefully kind of play around. Y'all could like work on different AI things. We can go over it as I share my screen, whatever. The goal for this is to be interactive. If you have a burning question or comment or concern, um, that's what this is all about. This is a playground. We're going to try to play today. That's the goal. Okay, so with that being said, I'd just be curious if y'all could put in the chat if you've played around with any deep research tools. So that's the first thing I'd like to discuss today. So there's OpenAI has deep research, DeepSeek has a deep research feature, and there's a few others. And I'm just curious if y'all have explored with that or if you're interested in that at all. And so I'll wait for responses in the chat. And hopefully you all should be able to see chat, I think. Okay, cool. Interested, haven't used, interested. Okay, great. We can see some things. Some people, yes. Some people, okay. So seems to be a little bit of a mix. Great, but not deep. Okay, so let's try out deep research and let's try, I'll put that in quotes. Functionally, if you're not familiar with it, it is a more agentic version of generative AI, such that it goes out, crawls the web, searches the web, and then kind of refines its own prompt as a result of what it finds. So it's kind of like a multi-step agent. And so next thing I'm going to ask then is, and I'll share my screen shortly thereafter, but do you all have something that you're doing research on? Do you have a task for a grad student? Is there something you want to investigate the literature on, something you are going to be teaching on soon, and you want some more supplementary materials, whatever. It would be great. I have ready-made examples, but it would be cool to kind of start this process live. So if you do have something, some idea, please put in the chat. I'll use it, or I'll use one of them, and I'll start sharing, and we can kind of go from there. We will use this. Okay. And here we go. Okay, I'm just getting myself set up here. Can I just get a heads up or a thumbs up or something saying y'all can see my screen? I just want to make sure I'm not doing this by myself.
Yes, we can see your screen just fine.
Cool, thank you. Wow, it's fun to see all the thumbs up all at once. Okay, I'm also teaching research topics through home equity line of credit applicants should be approved by lender. Term. Okay, let's take that because I have no idea. Interesting. To determine which home equity line of credit applicant should be approved by a lender. Seeking. So I clicked on this. I'm also going to copy and paste this elsewhere. And we'll use DeepSeek as well. They have a DeepThink thing. So this is something I really recommend a lot of people do, is to use a couple different models and compare and contrast. So for instance, my bet is OpenAI typically always asks for a couple of questions versus DeepSeek, which will just immediately start to think. So let's just answer this a little bit. Help me find whatever from the perspective of lenders. We'll say yes. We'll say in the US. Actionable. Etc. And for traditional I need anything else relevant. Okay, I'm just going to be quick just to kind of get this moving. And this will take a matter of minutes, which is quite a different experience from typical kind of like back and forth um, things. Harry asked, do I have any privacy concerns with DeepSeek? Yeah, not necessarily privacy. I mean, I used like a shell email to sign up. So in one sense, what I'm doing, I'm using it for demonstration purposes. I'm not giving it any sensitive data. I'm using it to compare and contrast across different AI models. So personally, no. Use like the previous generation of NVIDIA hardware, but it's still getting pretty good results. So I think it's worth checking out. I personally I don't use it in a serious capacity. I would use others that are more secure, but I think that's a valid concern. Are we allowed to use DeepSeek on our OSU hardware? Good question, Heather. I should note OSU does have an official AI page, and I could go to that now. I think it's AI.osu.edu. I'll paste in the chat. Yeah, so for institutional research, I believe if you're using any type of data, you have to use Copilot. If you're tasking students or if you're giving them the opportunity to use an LLM, it needs to be Copilot. So this is strictly kind of for demonstration purposes. I do know some folks in computer science definitely use different models outside of Copilot. Yes, and you do need to be logged in with your OSU credentials. This is more of exploratory to demonstrate, kind of to understand LLMs writ large and the recent developments. So that's kind of the space I'm coming through. Like, we may not be able to, I would definitely not advise using DeepSeek in any type of formal capacity. In the future, though, I heard rumblings we might get access to Gemini, Google's large language model. That could be useful then to understand like deep research because it has a deep research functionality. Okay, sorry, let me go back. Here we go. Interesting, it's only finding 3 sources. That's actually quite curious. In previous ones, it's been a lot more. And let's look at DeepSeek. So it thought for 30 seconds, which is a little bit less than, or certainly less than ChatGPT. And you can see it's kind of like thinking process. I actually think this is quite interesting and potentially useful to go through as an exercise with grad students or colleagues or whatever to see like what would your process be versus what is the AI's process, compare and contrast the two. I think that's interesting. I'm going to scroll down here to see what we got. And I'm going to ask who Donald is the person, Horan, it looks like, is the person that asked about this question. So I'm going to, Donald, if you could type in chat, I'd be very curious to hear if this looks about right to you, if this would be useful to you given this research question. Or anyone else, please chime in. Oh, interesting. So it didn't really actually give me links. Huh. It kind of just like answered the question rather than investigate this. So that's kind of interesting unto itself. And let's see here. Now, OpenAI or ChatGPT is now looking at 14 sources. And you can still see its thought process here on the right-hand side. So I'll give you all a second there. Donald says it looks to be kind of standard. Yeah. Okay. Interestingly, I don't know why, but it's going after finding a lot of OSU materials. So that's kind of curious. And then you'll even see that there's like thinking about like, oh, is this too old? Is this relevant or not? Which I think is interesting. Another aspect that's useful is like it's basically can only pull from open access materials and resources and websites. And so I don't know what communitybankingconnections.org is. You'd have to check it out. This looks kind of sketchy to me. This website looks weird, so I wouldn't inherently trust it. Maybe it's good. Um, but it seems to be pulling a lot from it. And this is definitely a downside of this type of thing where um, when it's writing up the results, you'll see like a plain text version or a version of this in a minute or two. It tends to cite the same sources in like the same paragraph. So one paragraph might have cited communitybankingconnections.org like 5 different times instead of kind of mixing the citations according to what it wants to say. But you can still see that it's still like thinking, which is kind of interesting unto itself. This is a lot longer of a process than what previously we've had with large language models. I'll stop there. Are there any questions, comments, concerns about this? I think it's worth pointing out because my guess is this costs $20 a month. DeepSeek is free, but this costs $20 a month, and it may help graduate students or undergraduates perform research. And that could fundamentally change. That could be a good thing. Some instructors might think that's useful. Could be a bad thing where a deep thinking model isn't supposed to be used by students, but they use it anyway. Or you have grad students looking up, instead of doing original research, they're utilizing generative AI systems. So it elicits a host of potential issues. But I'm just curious if y'all have any specific thoughts about this. Adam's asking about OSU rules for student use. So functionally, if you're asking students to use, one, disclose all of their generative AI usage, and two, if they are being tasked to use generative AI, it has to be Microsoft Copilot. But are there general rules about AI usage? Basically, as far as I can tell, there may be departmental or college requirements, but I haven't seen any type of overarching policies outside of, if you're going to use generative AI, it needs to be Microsoft Copilot for reasons of accessibility, security, and privacy. Which specific program? Okay, so this is OpenAI's DeepSeek. So I'll just create a new chat, or actually you can see on the bottom here, you have to click on this. You have to click on this telescope icon, I guess, to get the deep research. So that's ChatGPT, and then the DeepSeek version is just chat.deepseek.com. That's free. I would strongly suggest to sign up with, create a quick Gmail account or fake email account, sign up with that, and play around with that if you want to explore DeepSeek. Another way, some way that perhaps a better way to explore a bunch of different models, I'll put in the chat, is through Hugging Face. So Hugging Face is kind of a repository of actually a number of machine learning and AI technologies. It's kind of like a GitHub for large language models. But on this page, which is free and easy to access, and I think it does now require an email. Used to not, it previously didn't need to. But if you click on this cog, you'll see, hopefully you can see this pop up, and you could pick one of any number of models. So for instance, I'll pick Llama here. And now I'm using not the latest llama, but the previous llama. And then you can type and ask a question and what have you. So uh, on so something like that. So now you're chatting with llama. And sometimes this takes a while because it's free and it's not prioritized. But if you just go back to new chat, you click on this, um, or go here, sure. You can start a new chat and chat with the new model. And it's like that. You don't even need to go to a different website, which is quite nice. And Kayla, thanks for linking to that. The one thing I will say about this is I think it's important both for instructors and for students to describe, to be transparent in their AI usage. If you're not, then that's where COAM or other versions of academic misconduct or aspects of academic misconduct can kind of pop up. And I think honestly, it's going to be harder to detect AI usage because these models are getting better. And there's even a recent report out from Anthropic describing, I'm not like in love with their methodology, but describing just how much undergraduates in particular are using Claude, just their AI version. And in fact, there's 3 reports here. What I'm referring to though is the second one. But those are the 3 most actually like recent reports that I would recommend. One is the first one is describing kind of uh, it's an attempt at explaining how Claude or basically any large language model works. The second one is a very recent education report about how undergraduate students are using Claude, I think graduate students as well. And then the last one is the most recent report from the Human-Centered AI Institute or lab at Stanford. It's like 450 pages. It's a lot, but the executive summary is excellent. Meant to share those later with y'all, but figured when it popped up there. But long the short of it, with teaching and learning, or even for like supporting graduate research, there's basically no overarching or minimal guidance, really. You have to kind of determine what is appropriate, but what is clear is that students need to be transparent. Researchers need to be transparent when and how they're using generative AI technology. Okay, I'm gonna take a sip of water here. Are there got some plenty of other things to do, showing image and video generation. We could play around with something more precise to like finding research articles. I would love to do something that y'all find relevant or interesting or worthwhile. So I'm gonna take a sip of water. Please throw something in the chat and we'll go from there. Hmm. Okay, a few questions. Kayla, yes, 100% agree. You cannot rely on AI detectors. They are utterly unreliable. And I think even like OpenAI had one and they pulled it back. They pulled it down because it just wasn't being effective or accurate. So for me, that elicits a super interesting question or problem. I guess it depends on how you view it. But assuming that writing has typically been a proxy for critical thinking or thinking abilities previously, then if that's kind of that ground has been ceded to generative AI technologies, then how do we get at measures of student learning or thinking or critical engagement devoid of writing? Um, Is it exams by a debate in person? Is it writing in blue books? Is it, there's a lot of different ways to be more creative or to task students to do things that an AI can't do very well, although that space is kind of diminishing. So I think that's an excellent question that is still being grappled with, wrestled with. I think it's okay if y'all don't have, I certainly don't have an answer, but it is something that needs to be addressed because by fall 25, I think these models are going to get even better. They're going to be even cheaper. They're going to be more accessible. Adam asked, does Copilot have any deep research tools? The answer to that is no. just straight up no. Wouldn't be surprised if eventually get something like that, or if we get access to an institutional deep research tool like Gemini, but currently no. And then Donald, try to use GP. Is there a best AI to write code? So that's interesting. I would generally say currently Claude is the best one. And in fact, you can see, I said, I told Claude here, and I'll zoom in, to find a data set online and then create some interesting visualizations. So you can see it's like thought process here. It found some data sets. I don't know if I would trust it. Typically, I go to like data.gov personally if I want data, but oftentimes those data sets are too large for these to handle, at least currently. It analyzed the data in JavaScript, interestingly enough. And then this was one on flowers. So this is like, okay, this is better than what I've seen previously. This in particular, I think, is pretty good. So this worked, but it was on like a small data set. I think once you get into larger ones, using it for data visualization isn't so great. But generally speaking, currently, Claude 3.7 Sonnet is generally speaking considered to be the best coding one. You can even theoretically ask it to write an entire program for you. I'll do that real quick. I stopped correcting my typing because these generative AI systems have tended to be pretty good at understanding what you mean. And you could already see that it's coding. And we can come back to this. Gregory, can you talk about effective prompts for deep research? Excellent, excellent question, Gregory. That's actually really interesting for a couple different ways. Well, let's go to Gemini, and I will go to my personal account here so we get access to make sure I get the right one. Here we go, deep research. So what's interesting about this, at least from my angle, is historically chain of thought prompts up to this point have been really effective, telling the model do step one, then do step two, then do step three. And that tended to improve model performance. You can think of it this way. If you're thinking of a large neural network, going step by step, you're focusing this huge neural network, you're kind of focusing on more precise regions of it. So you get better outputs as opposed to trying to take the overall average of this huge neural network, with billions upon billions of artificial neurons. So historically, going in step by step or telling the model to go step by step has been useful. But now, if you try to do that with a deep research model, chain of thought is already kind of built in, and so you get worse performance. So some of the prompting strategies that you may have heard about 6 months ago actually make some of the most cutting edge models worse. So to combat that or what have you, you'll see at the beginning, OpenAI asked me questions for clarification. So this is one thing that kind of sets it apart from DeepSeek, which just kind of went off to the races and in fact did something that I didn't want it to do. So that kind of wasted time and resources. So generally speaking, previously I would, if I'm prompting something, if I really want to be good, I use AI to develop a structured prompt. But for deep research, I found that actually doesn't really help. It can kind of confuse the model. Deep research is really good at kind of investigating broad concepts or thinking broadly and then returning you the results. So let's say research center trends for my robotic essay. Sure. Let's just use this to kind of see what happens. I'm curious if it'll ask me questions. I forget if Gemini does this or not, but we'll see. And in the meantime, we can go back to our calculator. And there he goes, 8 times 8 equals 64. So it coded a calculator for me in a matter of minutes, which is kind of a nice convenient thing because it has artifacts, which basically just means if you code something, you can interact with it on the side. And then you'll also get to see all of the code here. And you can change it pretty quickly I mean, this is obviously a very simplistic example, but it's not hard to think of if you use R or C++ or whatever for data analysis, SPSS. It's not hard to imagine telling an AI to clean the data or to change an analysis in plain language as opposed to needing to understand R. So the scientific calculator, regular colors. Again, I'm just not even fixing that typo. All right, let's go back to Google Gemini. What's interesting is this will export something into a Google Doc, and it tends to make like reports that are in the thousands of words. But this kind of like ChatGPT is asking me, hey, here's the plan. Does this look about right? So instead of just asking me questions I have to answer, it's saying, hey, does this look good to you? So we can edit the plan and we can say, let's focus on LiDAR and radar. And that's going to say, okay, here it is again, please review, and then we'll say, go ahead. Interesting, this is kind of taken a little bit of a while. Okay, now we're saying start research. And I actually do tend to think it's kind of interesting to show the thinking. And we can go back to our calculator. Huh, interesting. It's still kind of working on it. That's a lot. Ah, there we go. And let's just see 4 squared. Yep, there he goes. And it's actually really like that color scheme. So to answer your question, Gregory, I don't know what the best steps are for prompt engineering. In fact, some of the things previously that were useful haven't been found to be useful or in fact detrimental. And I think actually simpler, more direct prompts and then going through a process of back and forth is where you get your best, likely your best output. Or at least that's how I would currently approach it. And you can see here, it's already found 34 websites and you can see them all here. So like going to Reddit right away isn't great. ResearchGate, Sage, archive.org, this all looks good to me. YouTube, that's actually really curious. I've actually never seen it search YouTube before. That's quite interesting. And then here again, you can kind of like see the thinking. So it basically goes through a couple different rounds of it. And you can tell by how it does, how multiple deep research agents do this. You can tell in the back end, it's kind of programmed. Go out and find something, read it, try to get a better understanding of the subject matter, retool your search strategy, go out, search something again, do that once or twice more. So typically a total between 2 and 4 times, and then write the report given all this information. So another element of this, sorry, if I'm going too fast, please let me know. Another element of this is the context window, which you'll hear about. So Meta just released Llama 4.0. Let's just see here. Here you go. The context window for Llama 4, which isn't this, at least one flavor of it. What is it? 1 million context length. Eventually, I think they want, yeah, there it is, Llama Scout, industry leading 10 million context length. So a novel is what, 75,000 to 100,000 words. So that's 10 novels. That's like 10-hour-long YouTube videos. You could think of it like soon it'll be like all of your lectures over the course of the semester can be ingested and can be queried, or basically every note a student has ever taken in their life can all be uploaded to one of these models. Not saying that's inherently good or bad, but these models are able to ingest more and more user data because they're getting more faster, more efficient, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Questions, comments, concerns? I'd love to hear from y'all about this. Is this disorienting? Are you excited? Do you have ideas for how to use this, et cetera, et cetera? Yeah, please. I'll take a sip of water again. We'll look at Gemini, but yeah, questions, comments. Okay, so Gregory asked a really interesting question about which LLM do I recommend for academic research? That's interesting. I wouldn't recommend any singular one. So I'm assuming if you're like researching topic X, I think it's one tool amongst many. I would try to use a variety of them. So for instance, there's like Research Rabbit or Elicit. Um, so I would suggest to use maybe something like Gemini's deep research to try to look up something or to find information. I would use something like Elicit, which is a little bit more targeted towards scholarly resources, although oftentimes they're not like entirely clear about what information they have access to. You'll also notice that they say AI enabled or they'll say AI powered, and oftentimes they're not like entirely clear in like what that means. So I would say like do research as you normally do, gather your papers or whatever data, or I guess I'm thinking specifically research papers. Um, and then use something like Elicit, use something like Claude or Gemini Deep Research, and see if it finds anything new or different worth exploring. So I would view it as a tool for exploration rather than a tool to find things that you likely couldn't have found otherwise. You likely will find things that you could have found otherwise. They just might make it more efficient for you. So, and it also will depend on the topic. So some LLMs will be better at different topics than others. And there's basically no way to know about this ahead of time, that you need to, in fact, kind of just play around with it and see which model. Some models, just for a variety of potential reasons, may be better in your disciplinary. You know, Llama and Copilot might be really good for your discipline when Claude might not be. That's perfectly possible. I've also, sorry, I know there's a bunch more questions. I would also say this, it could also be a useful potential brainstorming partner. I actually have a whole, let's see, I'm going to close out of this. I have a whole, I call it like a very good brainstorm. And you can see here, it's quite extensive. And I've just gone back and forth on this one chat. Like, hey, I want you to be kind of a critic to engage with this. I need new ideas, help me think through this. And I actually kind of refer back to this every now and then on for one specific project of mine. So you could also consider it to be like a brainstorming partner too for research. Okay, I'm going to keep going down this list. Are there any AI tools that can create good graphics for patient and or student handouts? Yeah, I would actually, I think Claude or ChatGPT could. I don't know how good Copilot is, but we can try. Um, or yeah, well, I should say this. I think I'd have to upload a document. Let's see if I can do that here. Um, hmm. Nope. Okay. Well, I'd have to do this again. Copilot currently can do this, although I don't think it's very good in terms of creating graphics. There is Sora, which is OpenAI's tool that is now available. These are images generated from AI. I think they tend to be good because there's a lot of, realistic photography. There's a ton of content you can train from popular culture. This looks like, an amalgamation of different art styles. Creating like an infographic or something may be more difficult. But I don't know about you all, but like I'm pretty impressed by, although there tends to be a lot of women for a variety of reasons, I'm sure. But like some of this is pretty good. Some of this is pretty, that's scary. That's kind of actually honestly off-putting, but it's also like pretty decent in terms of like an artificial image. So so they're bound to get good, although some of them are definitely creepy. Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's much better in the future. Any best practices to get AI to create new insights or links between topics? That's a good question, Donald. Um, are there any best practices? Interesting. I think that some of that is likely going to be a result of prompting. So let's just take Copilot, for instance, and say, we'll go web version. And I'm going to use it to create a prompt. And I'm going to give it a very specific type of structured prompt called a Tracy prompt. It's an acronym that stands for role, activity, or whatever, something like that. It doesn't really matter right now. To create new insights for my, and you can do this again across multiple models. Let's go Gemini. Oh, wow. Um, this is a huge side. I don't mean to get too oh wow, you can even create an audio overview. That's kind of cool. But you can see here, here's all this like Gemini deep research. Here's what it wrote, and even provided all of the citations at the end. And you can even ask, so gonna play with that. But in the meantime, let's create a new chat and let's get Gemini to create a prompt for me. And you can kind of like see my personal workflow of going back and forth between different AIs. We'll bring this over. Oh, excuse me. So this is telling me like, oh, interesting. Here's some tips. Environmental impacts. I wonder why the hell it actually asked me to do that. That's curious. I don't know. Um, oh, I'm doing the deep research. Yeah, that's a problem. You got to make sure you get the right one. Okay. Tracy. Yeah, you can see it's thinking, which is again interesting. Okay, so while this gets going, what exactly is Hugging Chat? It seems to serve different models. How does this work? Does it just access multiply freely accessible models? Yeah, Hugging Chat's like a GitHub. Or Hugging Face. So it's basically a repository for a bunch of different typical like AI models and data sets. So it's a GitHub, and you'll see there's like 1.6 million models here. So what they do is they just personally host open access models. That's how that works. So that's how you can get so many different ones. They access or they pay to access certain ones. But I think all of these are free and widely available. That theoretically you could download and interact with yourself. They just provide kind of a service to do that for you. Okay, let's go back here. Okay, this is its thinking, and then here's a structured prompt. Here's a template. You could fill in the bracketed sections. Okay, and now I'm just gonna, for the purposes of do this, fill in the links with a or And then you'll have theoretically a prompt that you can revise and go over. So I no longer create my own prompts by hand. If I want something that's kind of more intense or back and forth, I tend to, or I recommend you using an AI system to create a structured prompt. Although it's not fully understanding me here because it picked a very specific one and then filled it in. I guess that's actually not too bad. And you can see here, now you can just copy and paste that, say in Copilot, do chat, and see what happens. Okay, go on here. How do you go about authorship and citation requirements of using generative AI in a publication? Does the LLM become a co-author? It's going to depend on the publication venue, but a number of different organizations have said AI cannot be a co-author. And so I would suggest, I think there's already citation. Hey, give me 1 second. I think it's on Purdue OWL. I think they have a thing about AI. Yeah, they have an AI citation page with recommendations. But there's already, it looks like APA and a couple other MLA, Chicago, IEEE already have a couple different ways to cite. But basically, it doesn't become a co-author. Although what I would recommend, though, if you are using generative AI, say in the brainstorming process or in, like, say, finding and fixing grammatical mistakes, mimicking a style, what have you, I personally would save all the chats, save all of my prompts, and then describe in a footnote, or oftentimes now journals now have AI disclosure statements, and you have to describe exactly how you used AI. And honestly, I think for the purposes of transparency, both to model this for students, but also AI is going to become more and more embedded, I would really be very descriptive about what I did and why, like really in fine detail. This is the prompt I use. This is the output. Here's the entire file. So that way there's no question about what work the AI did versus what work you did. Kayla, do you know if any of the tools can do video analysis or analysis directly from audio recordings, or would you need data to be taken to text format first? Good question. There's notebookllm.google.com. So that will create audio for you from text. But my assumption is, yes, it should theoretically be able to input audio. And I haven't tested this out. I would have to try. My guess is that would actually be possible, and if not possible now, like in the future, in the near term. But yeah, actually, I don't know the answer to that. My assumption is yes. Oh, and video analysis. In fact, you can see this on, let me get a new, sorry, give me 1 moment to set up YouTube here. You can see, say, yeah, I don't know if I can see this. Yeah, I think this is better on mobile. I'm sorry. But on YouTube, you can see sometimes it'll say like, hey, do you want Gemini to interact with this video? You can ask it questions, ask the video questions, and it will answer them and give you a timer. So yeah, that's already kind of existing. But the question I guess is, are there tools that you can do? Yeah, I think you can honestly upload an entire video. It'd probably have to be on the shorter side, definitely less than like 10 minutes, to a generative AI system, and they'd be able to analyze it for you in some way, shape, or form. Okay, Heather, I've had very bad luck with multiple models hallucinating when asked for citations. Incorrect author. Any idea when it will get better for citations? This is even when it will supposedly provide a link. Yeah, so good question. One, I think the deep research, I'm not going to say solves it, but it tends to be better. Or let me see if I can find our previous deep research one. Here you go. Here's a works cited. That's not exactly what I asked for. But my bet is with deep research, the number of fake citations goes down substantially. So I'll just click on a few of these and we'll see if any of them are not valid. And it looks like that's valid, that's valid. That wasn't, although maybe, okay, so maybe the URL wasn't great. This is valid, this is valid, 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 valid. So yeah, I've had good luck with this. That being said, I think generically with a generic LLM, you have to think of hallucinations as a feature, not a bug, because they tweak the temperature, they tweak the variance behind the scenes. And this is something you yourself can play with, and you can see the different results. So long story short is there's different AI tools like deep research or more citation-focused tools, Research Rabbit, Elicit, et cetera, that attempt to address this problem. If you're just using a generic LLM, I think that there's no way around it. It will hallucinate because these models are designed to provide variance in their outputs. Deep research and things like Elicit or Research Rabbit are designed to be more precise. And in fact, you can see this new chat. I wonder, are there any, it used to be where you could say, I want to be more precise or more interesting. But I could show you in a different way. No, wrong one. This is it. Yeah, so this is something I love to show. So here's a like fill in the blank, right? Large language models in one sense predict the next word in a sentence. And you can see that there's a 98% likelihood it thinks light is the next word, and then sunlight is a 1.2% chance of it thinking, quote unquote, that this is the next word. But you can change the temperature and you say you want more variance. And so now instead of light being a 98% chance of being the next word, light is a 37% chance. And so these large language model companies, Google, OpenAI, Meta, Anthropic, are constantly kind of tweaking the temperature, tweaking the level of variance to get at output that it thinks is desirable. There's also something called top P, which changes the distribution or the number of words it's even considering. So there's a lot of different ways you can tweak this. Matthew, are there any good resources that gives an overview of different models and their uses capability? So that's interesting. The SNR, I think there's like a model page here. Yeah. So this is one attempt at this. This is called an AI product tracker, where they go through the different models. You have to pay for it, pricing. I guess they give comments and when this was last updated and a brief description with key features. So this is like the closest I'd say. This seems to get some of the biggest and baddest ones, but then other ones that are a little bit less useful maybe to the general audience. So for instance, Amazon Bedrock isn't useful for most people, but that's a lot. And I think it demonstrates or it attempts to give some type of flavor for each model. But to be frank, it's a really difficult space to kind of stay up to date on because it's constantly changing. Things are constantly evolving. Different models are coming out all the time. I mean, just to go through an example, what was that? Meta's new Llama 4 came out and originally got like really good reviews, and then it was found out that they kind of like cheated on certain benchmarks. They didn't release the version that was used on benchmarks. So even if these companies are all kind of incentivized to hype up their own products, so you really kind of have to figure out and learn as you go along. But that's currently kind of the best overall tracker of current LLM products. on the market. Okay, we've covered a lot of different ground. Any other questions, comments, concerns? I do want to go back to see. Let's see if I can find my right thing. Okay, I'm going to share this with everyone too because I think this is worth it. Where's the document though? Here it is. Open and export to docs. And I'll say this is a Google Doc, and I could share this with you all to show. I think it's kind of useful. It's a worthy exercise to read through something like this and see what a large language model is capable of with very minimal prompting and very minimal knowledge, domain expertise. Doesn't look like it's doing this very well. I can also copy this. I'm not going to put all of that into chat, but what I will do is put it into a blank document. Yep. Share. Anyone with the link? There you go. So now you all can see kind of the output here. And in fact, I'll even put the works cited on there as well. Sorry, I don't mean to make everyone dizzy. The first time I've been generally speaking pretty impressed with this level of detail. And you can see below here, it's almost 7,000 words. That's significant. That's a journal article and then some, most likely. I don't think it's quite as good as a journal article. You'll even see some issues here. Well, I guess it keeps on referring to like the same thing here in one paragraph. So for me, that's a telltale sign, but you can easily give it feedback and mix that up. Okay. We got like a couple minutes left. Love to answer any more questions y'all have. Or do you just have any thoughts or feelings you want to share with others? Gregory, has prompt engineering ever been considered a skill employers are looking for? Yeah, it's definitely, I think it's currently a skill. I wouldn't call it prompt engineering per se. I would just say familiarity or kind of like AI literacy more broadly. Can you interact with these systems and kind of improve your own workflow or process? Can you become more efficient? And then kind of prompt engineering is a way to get at that. But as I think I showed you very quickly and easily, you can get generative AI to create better, very structured, very rigorous, thorough prompts that likely would have taken a human individual much longer. So for me, I think it's a general familiarity and criticality about large language models, understanding both what they can be used for, but also what they're not going to be very useful for. What are their limitations? So has OSU created? I know there's definitely some things in the works for that, but generally speaking, I think it's moved too quickly for there to be any singular kind of approach. I honestly, that could change. I don't know what the new provost is going to do, or president. I don't know, but I think honestly, if you're waiting around for something from on high to happen, it's not going to happen. I would really strongly advocate to organize efforts at the departmental or college level. What do our students need to know? Because that's going to differ depending on discipline. But it's a really open question, Gregory, and I think that's one worth asking. One thing I'll maybe end on here with that is from what we see from students, from the Anthropic report I linked out earlier, what we're seeing is a lot of instructors are saying just don't use it. And I think that's potentially a problem. The cake is baked, the toothpaste is out of the tube. I'm not saying that students or faculty should all be using AI all the time. I think we need to engage with the technology because it's so powerful, because it's so potentially transformative in so many different ways. So I think we need to engage with it and use AI tools to get a better sense. I think really knowledge here is gained experientially. You have to use the tools. There's no write-up here describing you should use these tools in X way because that's going to change tomorrow. So rather just gaining familiarity and experience, you can kind of understand what the limitations are and how you could potentially use it. I don't think that's very easy to get at a priori or without experience. But yeah, I do think it will make, if a student says, oh yeah, I developed my own model, I trained my own model, I fine-tuned it myself, and I used it for project X to accomplish Y, and I didn't use it for project A because I really wanted to get to place B on my own. That's going to come off as stronger as some student who said, oh yeah, I'm an expert at prompt engineering, or so I would think. And then Kayla, we can maybe end with this. The tools are not going to go away, they're going to be embedded. Yeah, I agree. And I think to be critical, you need to engage with the technology. You need to understand what it is to kind of wrap your head around and to see what it is capable of. And to see, if you could write 7,000 words at say like a advanced undergraduate level or beginning graduate level, like what could it be capable of in 6 months' time? Or a year from now. And we're still kind of attempting to discover and uncover many of the hidden biases, a number of the different problems with generative AI as well. I think the solution to this is engagement, but thoughtfully and intentionally and critically. So yeah, I agree. Okay, I think we're at time. So Kristen, Brian, anything to wrap up?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. This is just a reminder that we will be sending out this recording after the event is over, in a follow-up email. We've also posted a follow-up survey in chat. So if you would like to receive feedback about this event, or maybe give ideas for other events that you would be interested in seeing from the Research Commons, feel free to drop us a line and we'd be happy to read all of those. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Put my email down there. Please email me for any other questions. And thanks for being such a engaged audience. Take care.